Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for Week 17's wide receiver rankings. The last of them, I've done videos on the quarterbacks, tight ends, and the running backs, and all of those are up available for you already. And I also explain everything that you are seeing here. So please refer to one of those videos if you are unfamiliar with everything going on and just the process that I go through for the ranking. Definitely covered that pretty well in the running backs video. I also covered the fact that I am having issues getting onto my website in order to update all of the rankings for the week. So currently I don't have a live updated rankings. Currently this is going to be it. So I have done the best that I can do to get this as close to what it'll look like come Sunday morning as possible. But there will be changes, I'm sure. And Sunday morning you can come visit me live 1 hour prior to kickoff for all of your start sit questions. You don't even have to talk to me. You can just look all up on the screen and all of the rankings will be there as well. I have a lot of rather large differences of opinion compared to the experts with the wide receivers this week, so let's just get right into it with my first tier of wide receivers, starting off at wide receiver 1, obviously, with CeeDee Lamb, followed by Justin Jefferson, Ja'Marr Chase, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Christian Watson, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, T. Higgins, and Keenan Allen to wrap that up at wide receiver 10. All the way over here on the right, you will see I do have two different darknesses of each of the red and the green. I'm not going to cover the lighter ones, or I'm going to at least try not to. They're a little bit close. I should have changed how different those are, but I just wanted to point out some of the other larger differences that I do have that are like 4 off or more, I think it is. And let's just start off with the first really big difference that I have, which is Christian Watson, and obviously a good portion of this difference is due to the fact that we don't know if Christian Watson will be playing this week. So, of course, my rating on him, he may be unranked. He may not be playing. So we will see, but really, really great matchup this week. And he was on his way in the first half of last week to justifying my projections, which actually my projected ranking had him as the top receiver last week. And yeah, things were looking great. So we'll see. I tell you, if he's playing, I'm almost certainly forcing him into my lineup pretty much regardless of the news. No, not really regardless, but if it would take some pretty hefty news about him being very limited or like a really high risk of re-injury, something like that, for me to be scared away from playing him. So really like Christian Watson a lot this week if he's playing. I do want to make one little note here with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I actually kind of like Jalen Waddle a little bit more with the quarterback change this coming up week, as far as at least a safer, higher floor play. But it's just a personal difference. The difference within the projections and everything is so big that I couldn't quite make that jump with Jalen Waddle, who is at the start of my second tier, which starts off at wide receiver 11, followed by Devonta Smith, DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, Garrett Wilson, Christian Kirk, Devontae Adams, Brandon Ayuk, and Chris Godwin to wrap that tier up. And it looks like the first major difference that we're going to speak about is Devontae Adams, who I have ranked 17th. If you haven't heard yet, Jarrett Stidham is going to be the quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah, I got that name right. And so that, combined with the bad matchup going up against San Francisco, really has me frightened for those skill players there. Just the entire offense, really. I might have to move back the running back there a little bit. But yeah, that's the whole reason for this drop, and I'm sure he'll be lower than 5th by the end of the week with for the experts. We'll see. And then it looks like Brandon Ayuk does have a darker green there. I have him 6 spots ahead of the ECR. I have him ranked 18th. ECR on him is 24th, going up against Las Vegas, so it's a really, really good matchup. And I don't love this ranking, but he does project pretty well. And he, I was afraid prior to last week about Brandon Ayuk's prospects with Purdy in that quarterback, and for the most part, that's come true, but I did see a few throws going Ayuk's way. I do think that is something that they're really going to want to get Purdy used to, getting out the balls out into the perimeter to help expand that offense, make it less predictable for the playoffs. And well, they've pretty much got things locked up, not completely, but right now would be, especially against this defense, would be a great time to get some reps in and get Purdy a little bit more comfortable with some of the bigger play throws. I liked what I saw last week as something to build off of, and I think it makes sense for them to try and work that in a little bit more this week. Now let's move on to my next tier, which I think is quite large, starting off at wide receiver 20 with DJ Moore, followed by Amari Cooper, Drake London, Jerry Jeudy, Terry McLaurin, Mike Williams, Allen Lazard, Jacoby Myers, Mike Evans, Gabe Davis, Michael Pittman, Juju Smith-Schuster, Rashid Shaheed, Isaiah Hodgins, Zay Jones, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson, and Cortland Sutton at wide receiver 37. So yes, it was a pretty big one, and see, there's a lot of highlighting over there. The first larger difference here is Drake London, who I ranked 22nd. The ECR is 29th on him, 7 spots ahead of that. I understand that this is definitely part of a push from the projections for Drake London going up against Arizona's not a bad matchup there. I like what we've seen as far as Drake London over the past few weeks. They've really been getting him more involved, and this is a pretty good matchup for him to potentially have a nice larger game, combined with, I guess, just some other guys falling down and feel a little bit comfortable with what we've seen. Maybe I shouldn't feel that comfortable with it, but that is currently how I have that ranked. We'll see if that maintains. And then let's move on to Mike Williams, who I have 8 spots below the ECR. I have him ranked at 25th. The ECR on him is 17th. Going up against the Los Angeles Rams, not a bad matchup. This really just hasn't been much of a big play offense all season. Mike Williams has had, when it was just Mike Williams out there, he was absolutely great. Other than that, he's been back to being Mike Williams, quite boom or bust overall. Do you think he has a little better floor this season than he did last? Is probably why he's not ranked like 30th or something like that. So, it just comes down to I feel a little safer with quite a few of these other guys, and that's where I differ from the experts. Don't know if they'll need that boom, if they need to risk throwing interceptions on those low percentage throws deep to Mike Williams. But he, like I said, he has developed a little bit of a floor to get used to running some of those shorter, quicker routes. Saw some of that last week too for some of his receptions, so that's nice. Let's move on to Mike Evans, who I've ranked to 28th. The ECR on him is 19th, 9 spots behind the ECR. I mean, we've gone over this every single week with the wide receivers for Tampa Bay for some time now, and nothing's changed. I'm still going to be lower than the experts, and for the most part, that works out. It is a good matchup this week against Carolina. I will not be surprised if Tampa Bay's offense absolutely has their best game of the season, but it hasn't happened a whole lot, and so for the most part, the ceilings just aren't that big. I'm thinking Mike Evans probably gets a touchdown this game, but it might be one of those not a whole lot of yards, not a whole lot of receptions, and a touchdown game. At least that's how I'm ranking him. Up next is Juju Smith-Schuster. I've ranked 31st. ECR on him is 23rd, which means that I am 8 spots behind the ECR going up against Denver. Has been one of the best defenses most of the season over the last couple of weeks, and especially last week. They are pretty much giving up. I actually talked about that as early as like 3 weeks ago, potentially happening. Now, here is the thing. So I actually do like the floor for Juju Smith-Schuster this week. I do think that they'll, be successful enough against this Denver defense. But since I'm put in this position of having to make an argument against Juju, even though I'd prefer to make an argument for him, then my argument comes down to 2 things. First of all, the coach, the defensive coach for Denver, rejected the job for the head coach. So maybe those defensive players will appreciate that, respect him, whatever the case may be, and they'll play harder this week just to help defend the coach that maybe they like. The second thing is they're going up against, the juggernaut of an offense in Patrick Mahomes' Kansas City Chiefs, and what defense doesn't want to bring it, get some highlights, shut down Patrick Mahomes? This is where you can make, a name for yourself. You can get on career highlights for a Hall of Famer. For 40 years, 60 years from now, you might be getting played as that pick, 6. If you pick him off as a defense. So, I think the defense The competitive juices will be there this game, and I'm expecting them to play hard, at least against a really good offense. Then at number 32 for my rankings, I have Rashid Shaheed, 20 spots ahead of the ECR, going up against Philadelphia. Not the best matchup in the world, but it is a matchup where you're going to need some big plays in order to stay in it, give yourself a shot, or just late to put up some points on the board, and who better than Rashid Shaheed to do that? And so I'm banking on that connecting. It's not something I want to miss out on if I happen to have Rashid Shaheed on my roster, or if I've made it this far and my receivers suck, so I go out on the waiver wire to get them. But maybe just keep them off of your team so you don't have to fight with where I have him ranked as far as playing him, because it is quite high, but I'm ranking him much like a Mike Evans type of player, a boom or bust, and I don't want to miss out on that boom. He's just not a big name at this point in time, but he sure has done it quite a few times this season. Let's move on to my 33rd player, Isaiah Hodgins, who I have 10 spots ahead of the ECR. The ECR on him is 43, going up against Indianapolis. A pretty neutral matchup, slightly not good, if anything, and we've really seen this connection. I've been on Isaiah Hodgins earlier than anybody that I know, so I've liked him. Maybe you picked him up because I've kind of been suggesting him and talking about him, and maybe you got ahead of your league, and hopefully you could pay off in the championship if you didn't get rewarded for him last week. I do believe he was my my secret play, whatever, my DFS value play, and probably a steal on my Saturday or Friday show last week. Now let's move on. I don't know if that's for sure. He was one or the other for sure. Then let's move on to my 34th guy here, ranked, Zay Jones, who is 7 spots behind the ECR. The ECR on him is 27, going up against Houston. Pretty good matchup. Could have a big game. He's in this group of the Rashid Shaheeds, although he does have a better floor, but he is going in a matchup against Houston that just doesn't have this like big scoring game profile behind it, and Jacksonville may be able to run the ball quite a bit in this game and not have to rely on the pass so much. And without the rookie cornerback there, Derek Stingley Jr., Houston has been worse against the pass, and that just might make things a little bit easier for like Christian Kirk to have himself a decent day. And so I don't think this would be a ceiling week for Zay Jones, and that's how I have him ranking, not having a ceiling week. Let's move on to this next tier of wide receivers, starting off at wide receiver 38 with Darius Slayton, followed by Brandon Cooks, Jahan Dotson, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Curtis Samuel, George Pickens, DJ Shark Jr., Romeo Doubs, Michael Gallup, Adam Thielen, Tyler Boyd, and Richie James Jr. to wrap that tier up at wide receiver 49. Jahan Dotson is the first guy in this group who I have a big difference with. I have him 7 spots behind the ECR. The ECR has him ranked 33rd. I have him at 40th going up against Cleveland. It's a so-so matchup against Cleveland. They should be able to run the ball quite a bit. The scoring in this game shouldn't be incredibly high, and so there's just some guys with better ceilings that I like over him, and he's had a great run as of recent, but, I'm projecting him on the season as a whole, and that brought me a little bit back to earth. I did have him ranked a little higher prior to looking at my projections, and so, you want to play Jahan Dotson just because I have him ranked 40th. Don't let that scare you off too much. He's at the top of this little tier here, so not too far away from some of these guys. Now let's look over at DJ Shark, who I have ranked 44th. ECR on him is 35, which means I am 9 spots behind the ECR. It's a great matchup going up against Chicago. I don't have any great arguments except for, I guess it's a similar argument to Jahan Dotson. DJ Shark has only done it so many weeks. Maybe I'll probably move him up a little ways, but I'll probably still have him ranked lower than 35th. Like, when I say I'll probably move him up, it would be like ahead of Donovan Peoples-Jones or something. There's nothing wrong with DJ Shark this week either. This is just how the cookie crumbled for him, and I'm expecting Monra and some of those guys maybe to clean up instead of him this week. That type of deal. It's only happened so many weeks for him. Now let's move on to Adam Thielen, who I've ranked 47th, 11 spots behind the ECR. The ECR on him is 36. Feels pretty high. A lot of times I've had to rank guys lower when going up against Green Bay because Green Bay has not been a great matchup. They got a little bit softer maybe midway through the season as far as how stingy or how low the fantasy points getting scored against them were for like wide receivers specifically. But yeah, things are limited for Adam Thielen. Just he could get a touchdown and all that. I'm not expecting some sort of big week. I would rather take some chances on some other guys. Let's move on to Tyler Boyd, who I have 8 spots ahead of the ECR. I'm ranked 48th. ECR on him is 56. Look, at a certain point, you give me a stud quarterback, a very talented wide receiver in a game where a lot of points are going to be scored, and I'm just going to take the chance on that guy to potentially have a big boom game. We know that could happen for Tyler Boyd. This is where Adam Thielen was my line of, okay, I'm taking a shot on a guy who hasn't done it for some time, but has it in him. Now let's move on to my next tier of wide receivers, starting off at wide receiver 50 with KJ Osborne, followed by Matt Collins, Paris Campbell, Russell Gage, Chris Moore, and Elijah Moore. At 55 there. I have Paris Campbell ranked 57th, ECR on him is 59th, so I'm 7 spots ahead of the ECR. Going up against the New York Giants, pretty nice matchup there. He just kind of slid up as I moved some other guys down. There's really nothing else to it. It looks like that happened with several guys this week where I'm sliding other guys up and one way or the other, they ended up slipping, fair distances. And so this is just where I ended up landing. I don't know how I feel about Matt Collins yet. I feel like I need to move him down even more due to Jared Stidham, but maybe they have some sort of connection. I feel like one of these guys, Darren Waller, Matt Collins, Devontae Adams, one of them is going to have a good week, I think. Somehow, some way, against San Fran. I don't know why. So, yeah, let's move on to the next tier, because we're almost there. And then I have a few more guys, actually. So, my final tier here for the top 60 ECR ranked wide receivers is going to start off with Treylon Burks at wide receiver 56, followed by Van Jefferson, Joshua Palmer, Demarcus Robinson, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling at the 60th. Josh Palmer is the only one I have a big difference with here. I'm ranked 58th. ECR on him is 45th. Hey, look. He's like the 5th receiving option on the team and doesn't have a big ADOT. He's on the field like 50% of the time. This isn't mid-season anymore, rankers, so if we could just move him back respectively where he should be, that would be great. I would not want to be relying on Josh Palmer. I do believe he maybe was the worst projected guy of all of my projections, him or Marquez were. And so, yeah, Don't go relying on J. Palm. Now, there are, like I said, a few more wide receivers. Let's get them all up here. So, Greg Dortch did, I ran projections on him. He didn't make this list. I would put him right in here at, right around here. I don't know exactly. It would depend on the quarterback for Greg Dortch. If Trace McSorley were playing, I'd put him 1 spot ahead of Richie James Jr. If we get Colt McCoy back, I'm putting him probably 1 spot behind Richie James Jr. And then for Chris Olave, I actually would rank him 27th, which would put him ahead of Jacoby Myers, right behind Allen Robinson, if Chris Olave were to be playing this week, as long as, the reports were okay on him as far as his health coming into the game. Then here's a list of these 4 wide receivers, actually, I can tell you. Almost certainly, I would plop in right behind Elijah Moore. That's Mecole Hardman, Corey Davis, Robert Woods, and Terrace Marshall Jr. And then the last guys, Alec Pierce, Hunter Renfrow, probably right behind Van Jefferson. Maybe shuffle them around a little bit with these guys. But that is the wide receivers. This is the longer positions. So we'll just end it there. I will have my Saturday special, my Steel Stock Scraps show, where I go over the injury report, any big updates going on, as well as the start sit / bold takes, some DFS picks there. We'll get into some DFS stuff into the playoffs, I'm sure. And then I'll be live Sunday, so come see me then. Peace out.